Happy holiday season. Here at Panelism, we celebrate Techtivus, the airing of technological grievances. Welcome to Panelism, the podcast where we talk about comics and culture. I'm Todd.
And I'm Taylor. Hello.
Hello. And what a fitting way to get into this episode where I experience a ton of technical difficulties.
It has to be Techtivus because we are experiencing, this whole year has been fraught with technical difficulties, but like this particular episode, of course, we're starting, 30 minutes after our scheduled time, but it's a great way to kick off this year's Techtivus, Todd.
It really is. And I especially wanted to start it off with something that you were not expecting, which is I've got a bone to pick with you.
Oh, all right.
How dare you, sir? How dare you get me into a show called The Sex Lives of College Girls and take up my entire Saturday.
Well, let me explain to our listeners. Let me explain to our listeners. I had just flipped on HBO yesterday, and as is sometimes happens, they flash some new thing at me, some new show, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting, and it was like by Mindy Kaling, and I thought, well, let me just check this out. And as I was watching it, I rolled into. I always start with new things, especially on HBO. I usually start with episode 2, just because that the pilot tends to be a little bit. Yeah, and then if it's a show I like, I go back and start over.
I see.
And I did that with Silicon Valley, and that's an apropos comparison because I texted Todd and said, "Hey, I might be wrong, but Sex Lives of College Girls might be the new Silicon Valley." And I said that because there were several characters who kind of fit that, like that Shakespearean like comedy of errors, like archetypes, right? And there was one character in particular who was like, I swear to God, is the female equivalent of Thomas Middleditch.
She definitely is.
Tech or Titch. And I was like, how is this possible? And so I've just finished one episode. I haven't watched anything else, but it sounds like you went all in.
Well, I watched the entire series, and there are two dire consequences from this. One is that now I have a terrible crush on Pauline Chalamet, or however you pronounce that last name.
Chalamet, yeah.
And that was unforeseen. And then secondly, I'm invested in the outcomes of the characters here.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I don't feel as dirty as if I had watched Gossip Girl.
Yes.
But there was definitely something. Of course, I anticipated a completely different kind of show with that title. I thought it was going to be much more of like a Sex and the City sort of thing. And I had the same feeling of like, oh, it's Mindy Kaling. Like, I got to check this out. This could be cool. I didn't know that she was a producer until you had suggested it. And anyway, I watched 8 episodes of it yesterday. And I'm just like, oh, come on. I got to know what's going to happen.
Well, and one does have to be a little cautious because, yes, the title of the show is Sex Lives of College Girls. So, men of our age, it does seem a little like, well, should I be watching this? I only clicked in because the graphic looked cool and it said, by Mindy Kaling. I'm always like, well, what's she up to these days? And then it kind of sucks you in because you really do. These kinds of comedies, especially on HBO, really come down to the cast, and you can tell they nailed that from the get-go, right? Just that cast it's perfectly balanced. Every sort of quirky thing is there, and it reminds me a lot of the 4 or 5 guys from Silicon Valley. Just it's just they're women now. There's even kind of an Erlich Bachman one, sort of one. So
it's funny too because I think it's like in the thumbnail where one of them is dressed straight up like Cher from Clueless, and I think that was kind of off-putting. Like, I don't want to. Like, I'm just. It didn't look like it was going to be a goofy, fun comedy like Clueless.
Pause there though, because Clueless based on a freaking Shakespeare story, so it's like Jane
Austen.
I'm sorry, Jane Austen. Why did I say that? What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of 10 Things I Hate About You. Sorry. But
yes. Also, that is Shakespeare.
Emma is basically the basis of Clueless, so it's also based on high literature.
And The Taming of the Shrew is 10 Things I Hate About You,
Thank
I believe.
You. I get those confused all the time.
But so anyway, so the third consequence of this is that you have ruined my Google searches. I'm going to have to purge history because I keep, I'm one of those people that, like, when I'm watching a show, I'm Googling things about it, and then I'll turn the phone off, and then I'll pick the phone back up. And so I must have typed in sex lives of college girls like 8 times, once per episode, to get like more information on the cast. But the actor who's dressed like Cher, it turns out she was on Broadway as Regina George in Mean Girls, and I was like, oh my God, they must have seen that and gone, that's her. Yeah. And her character is, surprisingly complicated, and you come around on her. So I would not say I love your comparison to like Silicon Valley and the Shakespearean nature of it. It did not hit me in the same way, but I like looking at it through that lens. Yeah. So who is it that you think is the who is the Thomas Middleditch?
That's clearly Pauline Chalamet, which, by the way, fun fact, is the older sister of Timothy Chalamet. So you don't have to look that up. That is correct. Yes. Because I'm looking at her going, she looks familiar, and I looked at the name. I was like, Chalamet. Well, clearly she's got to be and sure enough, she was related to.
She does look really familiar, but when I look up her filmography, I haven't seen her in anything.
No, she's pretty new.
But she's almost 30.
Been at it. I know. Yeah.
Okay, so, and then who is the Falstaff Ehrlich character?
I've only seen one episode, and then maybe just a few. I hunted and pecked at a few others just to kind of get a sense of it. Watch the trailer and everything. I think it's Bella. I think Bella has who's played by Amrit Kaur. Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she's sort of the most flamboyant in terms of like ego, and just sort of constantly some of the things that she says. Now again, it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, right? And they've taken some liberties, but that's just so far. I was just kind of like, okay, this is maybe Leighton, but I didn't get enough sort of look at Leighton to really know if she's where she fits in that scheme of things. But if you go back, we mentioned this on previous episodes where we deep dive on Silicon Valley, but the genius of that show is that they looked at Shakespeare, and I would say specifically Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, and took the mechanicals, which are the guys who put on the play inside Midsummer Night's Dream. It's Nick Bottom and Peter Quince and that whole crew, and they literally said, all right, who's our equivalent of each of these characters? And that's how they built Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is basically the mechanicals as like a whole show, and it works brilliantly as a result of that, because those archetypes are baked in, right? So then to say, well, let's do another one, and we'll kind of pick, not that they're just copying Silicon Valley, but they have those archetypes in place for this show, it seems like, in a similar kind of way. So you get the build on some. And there's been comedy ensembles for years and years and years, but specifically choosing those archetypes seems to be a more newer, at least it has become in vogue since, I would say, 2012, 2013. So you get to see that a lot more. I didn't see it, by the way, like, contrasting this show with my wife and I have gotten really into New Girl because we didn't watch it at all when it came out.
Interesting.
And so we've been going back on Netflix, and also an ensemble show, but it does not. I bring it up because it does not have those sort of Shakespearean archetypes. It's just much more of a kind of I don't even know how you call it. How do you even describe New Girl? Like, that's probably why I didn't get into it, because I could never get pitched the right way. Anyway,
I don't know. I never got into it. So.
This is a cul-de-sac I did not want to go down. So we can go back to Techtivus.
Yeah, I mean, we start out every Techtivus with a little friendly chat, and then we really get to the airing of grievances.
Well, and let's real quick, for new listeners, we should explain what Techtivus is. If you aren't familiar with Seinfeld specifically, there is a very well-known sort of thing or event in Seinfeld where George's dad has Festivus. So instead of like Christmas, he created his own holiday called Festivus, and they put up this Festivus poll. But crucial to the holiday is this thing called the airing of grievances, where they sit around the table, kind of Thanksgiving style, and they just basically bitch about everything else that about everybody else.
You list the ways someone has disappointed you over the last year.
Yep. And so we took that concept, and now for several years now we have done our own Techtivus, and I don't know if we did it last year. I forget actually.
I was just trying to look that up, and another tech grievance. Our website's not coming up.
Well, hell.
But
here's number one.
I don't know that we were that regular about it. But there was, I feel like there's a crucial stage setting thing we have to do,
yes.
which was we were, both of us previously were iPad owners,
yes,
Android users, and then we were split on our desktops. You were a Windows user, and then I was mostly a Chromebook user, although I would mix our podcasts on a Mac, on a MacBook, but as you know, my day job is writing, and I really loved the Chromebooks. It's just a browser kind of function. You know, I'm just in Google Docs writing like little distractions. For years, I abused that Chromebook and I loved it. So with that stage set, we have crazy news, which is that we both independently, although we did discuss it before it happened, had made the decision to go iPhone this year.
Yep. That was earlier this year. That was back in the spring. Because I had a
Did
Pixel.
You go that early?
Yeah,
so I went a little later. I was
a very happy Pixel 2 owner. Very happy.
Okay.
In fact, I would say up until this, the Pixel 2 was the best phone I'd ever had, and clearly the best camera at the time. And real quick, in a just awfully traumatic event, I was walking down our stairs like the weekend of Easter, and it dropped from my hand in slow motion, Portlandia style, bounced on each stair, and cracked the screen as each stair had hit. And then by the time it got to our gravel parking area, like the screen was just destroyed, and I just had to sit there and cry. And I was like, well, shoot.
Were you an Android user before the Pixel?
Oh yeah, I'd been an Android. I have never owned an iPhone.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'd flirted with it in the past, but it was either too small or I had other problems. Now I had I was like, when the iPod Touch came out, I had one of those like way back, like in 07.
Right.
But other than that, I'd never had an iPhone.
Well, I just wanted to add one context to that, which is you were so excited by the Pixel 2 camera,
yes,
that you on your honeymoon, you as a photographer did not take another camera.
That's correct.
You were like, this is so good. I'm not taking like an SLR. Like I'm just taking the phone. Yep. And you were super, super happy about it.
Oh, I took some amazing shots with that camera. Yeah. And at that time, we were talking like 2018, that would have been 2018. At that time, it truly was. I mean, come at me, Apple fans. Like the Pixel 2 had the best camera, beat any iPhone, was was kind of ahead of everybody. And then with the iPhone 12, that all kind of changed again. And so, I kept hearing, I saw the event last year and was kind of like, well, that's interesting. That might be the first iPhone I could actually be intrigued by. So when my Pixel died, a horrible death, I did, I looked at other Pixels too, and I really thought about it, but I looked at that iPhone 12 and I went, shoot, this might be the time. But even more important than that was this crazy twist where Apple had decided to double down on privacy and really make data protection and privacy and, how apps track you or don't track you. Like they made that a kind of a crucial plank of their company, which I really respect because that has been increasingly more of a concern for me. Google kind of has gone the other direction, or at least Android has gone the other direction. And so I was just like, I don't know, man, if Apple's going to really put this forward and make this important, I almost feel obligated to like get an iPhone just to reward that behavior,
I agree. I love the way you put that as a reward because that is so much of how I felt about it. So and maybe some other crucial context is we both bought our phones before the 13 was released.
Yes.
Which one did you get? Which iPhone?
12 Pro.
Okay, but not. Wait, is this the huge one? I can't remember what the huge one is called.
That's the Pro Max. I got the
Pro Max. Okay.
So the 12 Pro is the same thing as the 12. It just has that extra. It just has a better camera and better sort of memory and everything. And then if you want the really big one, you gotta get the Max. So
I got the 12 Mini. And my hardware concern was, this is a totally stupid thing that I have no way of justifying why this happened. But I owned two Pixel 3As.
Wait, explain. This is news to me.
The large one and the small one.
Okay. Just feel it, whatever mood you're in. It's like, I'm in a small mood today.
Well, I can't even trace back to why that happened. But I do remember, I didn't buy them at the same time, and I think I must have had like tech problems with one of them and had to return it or something.
I see.
And then I don't remember what it was, and I ended up like there was a Black Friday sale, and I was like, you know what, I'm sick of this small one. So anyway, I did have the two, and I would switch my SIM card, but even with the small one, it felt like, wow, I don't like the way this feels in my hand. Like over the years, it was like, I want the big screen of the other one for camera and for reading or anything like that. But I hate the way that feels in my hand. It feels like I'm holding a small tablet. So I went with the iPhone 12 mini, and my whole idea was like, I don't want this to be a thing that I'm lying in bed reading this phone.
Yeah. Yep. I understand.
And the bigger the screen, the more available that is to me, the more I'm going to do that and just pump blue light into my eyes, and I hate that. Now, I can't say that the 12 mini has fixed that, because now it's super comfortable to hold in bed.
Yep.
But the polished hardware and everything, I love the feel of this thing in my hand without a case on. That's like such a huge deal too. So the way you said that, rewarding the Apple for doubling down on privacy, I knew starting in the spring as because I work in marketing, but more there's I'm not sort of the person buying the ads or whatever, but as I interacted with those people that really track everything you do, and they were showing concern about Apple's new privacy rollout, I was like, oh, I actually feel great about that.
What concerns in what way?
As a consumer. Well, they were like, we're going to lose all this data once this OS update goes out to everybody. Yeah. And I was like, actually, that sounds wonderful.
No, that's a good thing.
So that had sort of put it in my head to the point where when I started having more tech problems with the 3A, because it was just old, and and the 3As were always sort of the A's is for Pixels. If you don't know, that's kind of the budget version of their phone.
Okay.
So I think so the 3A was sort of like, it was crashing on me sometimes, and I just thought, well, I'm going to have to upgrade anyway. I'm going to go with this 12 mini. And so that was just a huge leap for us.
Huge leap. Let me real quick before you finish that thought. I just want to, I am sure if there might be some people listening to this going, you guys have completely just washed over the fact that Apple might be compromising that privacy policy a little bit by allowing, I think it's for child sex trafficking, they're going to like dip into your photos if you have a bunch of photos on iCloud. It hasn't been confirmed yet if they're going to actually do that. And there's, they have good reasons to do so, but there are some privacy purists who are not happy with that, and I understand, right? I get it, but my point is, of everybody out there, Apple has the highest commitment to privacy, even if it's imperfect. Like I'd rather continue to support just their prioritizing it, not just giving lip service to it, but prioritizing it, like actually putting privacy nutrition labels on their apps, on their app store, like those kinds of things. Like that's all good. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. I could sense somebody listening going, they're not even talking about. I'm like, no. It's believe me, I understand.
Well, that's also a thing that I don't necessarily feel uncomfortable with. Like, it's not like humans are doing this. They have an AI, scanning photo uploads, and in the world in which we live, like that's probably a good thing to do. Like, keep that shit off your server. Like, if you are really concerned about privacy, you shouldn't be using any connected device at all. Like if you're a privacy purist, get a black phone and don't upload anything to anyone else's cloud. So because this is
get a new burner every week.
I can't believe how many times over the last 5 years that I've mentally recollected that XKCD comic where this guy was like, let me explain freedom of speech to you.
Yeah.
Like if Twitter won't let you say something, they're not censoring your free speech. They own that server.
Yeah. No.
You don't have the right to speak freely on someone else's platform. Facebook and Twitter can and should be shutting you down when you're, trafficking bullshit or child porn. Sorry. Is it like / rant ended? So when we made our notes document for this, you made a note for the minimal nonsense in an increasingly convoluted world.
Well,
do you feel like the iPhone has brought that to you?
Well, I have to clarify this because I'm not just talking about the iPhone when I made that comment. Listeners should understand. I went full cult of Apple this year.
I was going to build up to this, but
I know,
jump in.
But this is the time. So I just give you some backstory, folks. I for the longest time was not interested in Apple at all. Yeah, I had an iPod at one point in time. I bought songs on the iTunes store, but that was kind of it, right? I never had a MacBook, never wanted a MacBook, never had an iPhone, never wanted one. Thought that the hype was bigger than the company, and I think justifiably so for several years. That was probably the correct attitude. And then I think maybe even you had said this to me. I feel like maybe Apple finally became, matured into the company that was worthy of the hype. And I'm sure many people will be screaming like, "No,
that's going to outrage Apple fans."
Yeah, but guess what? It's think about this, right? No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Oh, well, I was going to say, it is a black and white fact. When you talked about owning an iPod Touch back in the day, and I had I had original iPods that were gifted to me. Well, my first iPod, I was still using Windows. It didn't work with Windows.
Yep.
It just literally did not work. I had someone had given me an Apple iPod that would not work with Windows. So I had gone through this crazy hack thing of getting this literal probably malware that I hacked onto this iPod that would allow me to control it just like an external hard drive. But, that meant no metadata. So I'd often have songs come up with just a scramble of numbers and stuff. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah. When I had the iPhone 1, again, which was a thing I bought used for, a friend was upgrading and he was like, hey, I'll sell you mine. So I bought his iPhone 1 and would have to take it to work to plug it into my Mac to use it. And then, I wasn't an iTunes user because I still had a Windows at home. And at that point, I probably had an Ubuntu netbook or something crazy. So, that's on me. Sure. But these things did not work. Anytime there was a software update, you had to take it to a computer, physically plug it in. When I bought my first Android, not only was it under $200 and would work on any carrier, it just got updates over the air.
Yep.
There was no you have to have another piece of software and be tethered to it. This is just a fact. Apple fanboys all Apple fans it's sort of, I shouldn't generalize. Not all Apple fans. I'm talking about the specific hardcore fans.
Yeah.
Think that Apple because they were first to market, maybe.
Yeah.
That they are the gold standard in so many things. Case in point, a minor case, because I know we're going to circle back to you jumping into the whole ecosystem, is that autocorrect. And Siri and autocorrect. I have gotten the impression from Apple fans that they're we all kind of make fun of this, but what can you do? And I think you can get an Android. You guys don't understand how well Android does this stuff.
Yeah.
Google Assistant listens so much better than Siri. Although I'm sure Google has hundreds of hours of me just screaming curses at it.
Let me pause there real quick because since I have abandoned the Pixel 3, I have noticed I have a Google Home in our kitchen. I have noticed its speech recognition has deteriorated incredibly.
Yeah. There is a weird thing where it has gotten worse. But
you're right. No, for the longest time, it was better than Siri. I should clarify. Sorry.
Well, and for me, I had the same thing. In fact, I just stopped using my Google Home. Well, I also had privacy concerns about that. And it switched off the mic and then just got rid of the whole thing. And then, but I definitely noticed that. But hands-free in the car, I liked it so much better. Like, it is a pain in the ass to send it. No, it's not a pain in the ass. It's stupid the way Siri sends a hands-free text. Whereas like Google, at any point, like anywhere that there's a keyboard on an Android, you can just tap a mic button and dictate.
Yep.
And Siri, you can't do that on Apple keyboards, like on any of their mobile devices. You have to tell Siri what you want to do and then hope Siri translates it correctly, and which is pretty sketchy. But also, like, Apple's autocomplete is aggressive to you. Like,
oh, isn't it? And it's not all. It's accurate half the time at best.
Oh, at best. I wouldn't even go that far. I would say 20% of the time it helps me. Not even that. Not even. But you'll be typing
2% of the time.
I'm going to keep lowering it. You'll be typing a perfectly legitimate word, and it will sort of make it. You'll see the suggestion pop up. You know, you're typing bathysphere, and it's, do you mean bathing suit? And you're like, no, I didn't mean that. So I'm not going to tap on it. You hit the space bar, and it just inserts what it wants anyway. So I'm constantly, and Google Android does not do that. Google Android's like, do you mean this? As in the suggestion box. And if you don't tap on it, it's fine. It lets you type whatever nonsense you want. Yeah. Which is way more pleasant. Like, I'm constantly sending follow-up texts on my iPhone. Like, I meant this.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's
same thing.
And it's just, and they're like, bathysphere is a crazy word for me to come up with, but it's like, I'll just put in a totally normal word.
What conversation were you having about, was a game were you playing where you're like, well, there's a bathysphere?
I'm thinking of the Smog song, Bathysphere. Trying to tell people about this 30-year-old song, I guess. But you're just typing a normal word, and it decides like that's not what you meant. I'll fix it. And so anyway, I've gotten that perspective from Apple fans. Like, they just feel like this is the best thing. This is as good as it gets. And I think software-wise, that's not exactly true.
Well, and correct. And historically, you know, it's been a bit of a game of attrition for them, because historically, I mean, let's rewind even to 2010. Like, there was not app parity, so there was a good chunk of very reliable, important apps that were Windows specific that just were not developed for the Mac. You know, even things like, I mean, good Lord, Microsoft. Oh wow, sorry, I don't know if you heard that. There was a bit of a rumble. Weird.
No.
It's a very windy day here, Todd. But like, as time has gone on, like all these issues we normally talk about have been addressed. And I'll even the spoilers. I ended up getting one of the new 14-inch MacBook Pros. My laptop, I realized the first time ever I had kept my Windows laptop for 6 years, which is like 3 years longer than any other laptop I've ever had. So it was due anyway, and I could go on an entire Techtivus episode just about this, but that Windows laptop, it was running Windows 10. I had to do so much daily triage just to keep it running correctly. Like, I had to clean my PC, I had to clean my registry, I had to do a disk clean, like constantly, because there's just so much bull crap accumulating, so much needless cache, accumulating. And then the coup de grace of the whole thing was that Adobe was just becoming relentlessly insufferable. Like, I would start Photoshop and have to go make coffee, and 10 minutes later the thing was still loading. It's like, come on. I won't even begin to comment on just how miserable Premiere Pro was. Like, I'd gotten to the point where I loathed touching video, editing anything, which used to be one of my favorite things. It was just becoming the most miserable experience on that laptop, because anytime I'd open Premiere, like half the time it would freeze or crash, or I'd be doing an export and it would crash, or I'd try to apply a simple effect and it would have to render for 5 minutes. I'm like, good God. So I just decided with Apple putting out these new MacBooks, and I have a friend who's he actually worked at Apple for a little while, and he's very cult to Mackie. But he's like, look, think about this. For the first time, they have developed their own chips, the M1 chips, specifically for these laptops, and it's a soup to nuts integration. They're not trying to have to make Intel work. They can make the chip work for the laptop and vice versa. Yeah. So you're going to get like the use of cores, because I don't know if people know this, most Windows machines, like if you see like, 6 core, chances are like 3 or 4 of those aren't being used for anything. They're just sitting there. And so like Apple actually makes use of all the cores all the time. They completely optimize the experience. You can go and look at any number of YouTube videos that, sing Hosanna about this. So I was kind of intrigued. I'm like, shoot. And then they did things like talk about, and this is what I mean by maturing into the company worthy of the hype. They got rid of that stupid ribbon that appears above the keyboard, which I was like, I'll never buy a computer that has that. Like, who's that for? They brought back.
Do you mean the little touch thing on the?
Yeah, I call it the ribbon. I think they call it the ribbon too. It's that little touch bar right above the. I thought it was hokey and ridiculous and like something that, would have happened, during the 90s when Steve Jobs wasn't there. I'm like, what is this? And so they got rid of that. They brought back the MagSafe charger, which they should have never gotten rid of. That's the thing where if you accidentally trip over your cord, it doesn't yank your laptop. It just detaches it because it's magnetized. They brought that back. They brought back like a little mini disc, like a card reader, like built in. That's back. They have more USB-C ports now. Like they literally did all the things that I was like, well, they would have to do this, and this for me to even consider it. And they freaking did it. And so I was like, well, shoot. And then I tried it. I played with it, and kind of fell in love. And I was like, and so here's kind of all of this coming back to, you had asked me in our notes, I said minimal nonsense in an increasingly convoluted world, right? So for me, it was taking a laptop experience because, not only did I have to do all this like triage, cleaning, all this stuff, but like, even things like you go to your you go to your Windows like control panel and you try to uninstall a program and you see all this other stuff there that shouldn't even be there. And then you go to your I don't know how many people do this, but you can actually pull up a little dialog box in Windows that shows you all the applications and processes running at any given time. Right. You look at that and you're like, okay, I have 4 programs I've opened, and yet I'm seeing like 37 things in this list that aren't those 4 programs. What is all this? Why is all this running? Why is this needed? And then to make it even worse, you go to like, let's say there's a program that's freezing or that you just don't want, you go to like, on a phone, you can just like swipe it and close it, and it closes, no questions asked. It doesn't sit there and go, well, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't, and so on Windows you try to like force close something and it will still sit there for like another 10 minutes, like, well, maybe we gotta clean everything up. I'm like, no, just shut it down. Right. I don't want you open anymore. Like, just shut down. And so all these little things.
This is so funny to hear.
All these little things.
Like, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh my God. It's like, as much as I was not an Apple fanboy, about certain things, I have been in their laptop ecosystem for so long. So this is like, I'm hearing this as the Apple fanboy going like, yeah, of course Apple's better at that.
Well, and I've used Macs in the past, and it wasn't, it's like I'm familiar. It's not like it was a completely foreign concept to me, but I was so used to Windows, and up until this point, my argument for Windows was always twofold. One, they have all the programs you need work there. You don't have to have all these weird workarounds or like hacks or anything. It's just there it is. And 2, you can customize most of it to your liking. So like if there's something you don't like about the desktop, you can get in the settings and mess around. And that was always, but at the same time, like all this other bull crap just kept piling up. And it got to the point I was having coffee with a good friend here in town who did the same thing I did, only about maybe 7 or 8 years before me, where he was, total Windows, non-Apple person, and just slowly acclimated until now he's 100% this way. And I was explaining to him, I was walking through my day, I was like, yeah, I have to do this and this. And he looked at me like I was in a cult. Like, you poor person. Like, why are you living like this? And actually said, you should not have to devote 15 to 20 minutes of your working day just to these things. Like, don't you understand how insane that sounds? I'm like, oh, I guess it does.
And I think the deeper, like you're touching on such an important issue, and the deeper insanity here is that we all do that with something to some degree on the Apple side or the Windows side or, Chromebook or open source or Android, whatever it is, like, because that is precisely what was happening to me with my iPhone 1 and why I went Android. And I remember all my iPhone friends thinking that was like crazy. And I'm like, right. But like when you get a software update, you're going to have to go somewhere and plug that phone into something that's running a specific piece of software that you can't, there's an Apple version and a Windows version, and they don't work together. Which is similar to this, which we will get into in a minute. I'm wrestling with a podcast workflow on the iPad, and dumbfounded that it is not like a plug and play solution.
Yeah.
Why is GarageBand on iOS different from GarageBand on macOS?
Isn't that ridiculous?
That is so stupid. I can't express it. And 5 years ago, I bought an iPad thinking stupidly, because why would you not think this, that iMovie and GarageBand would work just the same? Like, I was like, yeah, I can just take the files from my laptop, put them on the iPad, back and forth. No, they're totally different. And at that point, the iMovie on the iPad would only bake out at 720. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, why am I dealing with this? So I returned to the iPad, and it took like 2 years before I was like, okay, I feel comfortable that they've gotten their act together. But, so what you're describing with Windows is like, Apple fans are totally willing to put up with that bullshit too, just in certain things. They're just not recognizing it the same way.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to figure out what we want to, you and I talk about this all the time. Like this podcast workflow is like, why was I so much more willing to hack this stuff apart in years past? Is it because I was younger and just had more energy, or I could devote my energy and attention to that, or was it truly like that was actually the simpler solution, even though it was so convoluted? I don't know.
I think it's both.
That's the thing I wrestle with. Yeah,
I think it's both. But here's the other side of this. So like, I think youth does have some part to play in that you are more patient with. I don't know if it's easier or preferred so much as like, I have the patience, and you just sort of want to tickle the brain a little bit by just, the puzzle solving aspect of it is kind of fun. I think something might have happened to me when I turned 40 this year, where I'm just like, I don't have patience for this anymore. Like, I don't have and that's, maybe that's fuddy-duddy of me, but like at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to devote so much of my day, or just even I don't want to rent out so much of my brain space to these problems. Like, I just want this done. Like, I want to turn on a program. I want to turn on Adobe Premiere, and in a few seconds, the program is open and I can use it without having to fear the whole thing crashing down. And I will also say, by the way, I have upgraded that Windows laptop several times over the years. It wasn't like I've been using it off the shelf this whole time. I've added memory and RAM and stuff. But again, Windows, the way Windows, I can't speak to the actual technical specificity of this. So please, if you're really interested in this, go Google this. But I can tell you the way Windows uses those Intel chips is it does not take advantage of all of the cores. There's like wasted processing space just sitting there. And Apple does not do that. And I was not aware of that until maybe a year ago. Because I was kind of bitching about this, then too. I was like, man, this is not great. So all this to be said, I got a MacBook Pro, and I'm only a week in, literally a week in, and I am so in love. I can't even begin to tell you. Like, this, I'll try to make this not just a giant Apple commercial, but a couple key things. One, before we started recording, Todd was fiddling with his mics and stuff, and I'm like, hey, let me restart. While I was waiting for us to begin, I was installing some old programs from the old computer. I'm like, let me restart. It's prompting for a restart. And I'll just contrast this by saying, like, with the old laptop, when I think you too, like when either of us had to restart, it was like, we seldom wanted to, because it's like, well, this might be a 15 to 20 minute endeavor while it not only restarts, but loads and then everything. Then Windows has to load. I kid you not, I hit restart on this MacBook Pro. Within, I would say, 30 to 45 seconds, the thing had restarted. Every app had reopened to the exact point I left it, as though nothing had happened, and everything was in place. And I just sat here, my mouth dropped. My jaw dropped. I was just like, how? What have I? Right. So then my question is either, is this so advanced as to be miraculous, or was I putting up with just the worst situation for too long that my brain got addled? Like, it was like an abusive relationship. Like, I just forgot. I've just lost perspective on like what a proper restart should be. Right.
The other thing, oh my God, the other thing you're bringing up for me is that I feel so much like I'm in Groundhog Day, where the tools are changing, but I'm still going through, because as you're saying that, I'm having flashbacks to like, oh, right. Like I'm complaining here about an like iPad podcast workflow, but it used to be that if I was traveling and I only took my Chromebook, you and I had to go through crazy workarounds to record a podcast.
Yep.
And so it got to the point where I was like, fine, I'll just travel with my MacBook. But my MacBook was several pounds heavier. It was like one of the last editions that had the CD drive in it. So it was, you know, it was a big pain in the ass to travel with that versus the Chromebook. Cause that was my whole thing with the Chromebook was like, hey man, I can be anywhere and just like write, you know, and the battery lasts forever. And but it didn't do anything. I couldn't record audio on it. It sucked, for all that media stuff. So, I remember this experience of, a couple years ago when the Chromebook was burning out, just going, you know what, I'm buying a MacBook, and taking it home and going, oh my God, why have I been missing out on this speed and stuff? Yeah, but the truth was like, well, I didn't really need it, so it's fine. I wasn't missing out on it. But now I'm back in that situation where I'm like, well, let me transfer this whole workflow to the iPad. And I'm back in the Chromebook frustration of like, well, I guess I can't just travel with the iPad because I can't do all the stuff I need. So I got to bring the laptop.
Well, let me say too, I think something has happened in the last 3 to 4 years where companies like Adobe, and I'm sure there's others, but I'll pick on them specifically, had decided like, hey, look, our products are for professionals and not really prosumers anymore. So if you have a machine, because in days past you could get, Photoshop on anything and it worked just as fine as like on a professional desktop, and there was parity there, right? You could be a prosumer or a professional and have basically the same experience. Somewhere along the way, Adobe's like, yeah, not so much. We're gonna make these increasingly harder to use on just regular consumer grade stuff. And, more and more, at least some of my friends in the creative space had to get these big pimped out desktops to just have a regular time, like a regular experience. So the beauty, and this will be my final sort of upsell, the beauty of these new MacBooks, MacBook Pros, is it's like they took a super powered desktop tower setup and consolidated it into the size. You basically put all that power in the size of like a Chromebook. Like it's I can't describe it any other way. It's bizarre to even consider like how fast this damn thing is. And I'm sure like, within time, as programs get bigger and beefier and all that stuff, it'll, I'll have to upgrade and yada, yada. But like, I bought this, investing this, thinking like, okay, this will be my laptop for the next 6 or 7 years, probably. I have to assume that. So like, where are we going and how's this all working? So that was incredibly, just all of this. I think I told you and Drew on our private Discord, I was like, it feels like when you go from a long time Windows environment into a Mac OS environment, it feels like moving to a country take a country you like visiting and imagine moving there permanently. Like, I live here now. So like, again, wasn't opposed to Mac OS and completely. There was things I loved, things I hated in the old days, but once I got in, I was all in. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. Like, it's not Control C anymore. It's Command C. And like, print screen is not just a simple, I'll live with the things. I still bitch about the fact that Apple's like, yeah, we don't have a print screen button. Instead, you have to do these like, crazy 3 or 4 key combinations just to print your screen. It's like, no.
It's so much better though.
Is it?
The way that you can like draw on your screen and just say, I just want a snippet of this. And that's one of the hilarious things where every Windows user was like, oh, but it's super easy on Windows. First of all, you just download this program called whatever. And I would go like, no. This is built into Macs. Stop talking.
I see. But okay. So a couple things, there's a couple other complaints about this, in our list. And I want to talk specifically, I'm still on the MacBook. So bear with me. But like, one of the things I totally forgot about and have since remedied, but like it took me by surprise, was the fact that yes, even after all these years and all these improvements and, really, I credit Tim Cook with really sort of refining Apple to be the company that I've sort of fallen in love with now. But like, even after all of that, you still can't load up an external hard drive that was formatted NTFS, which is the standard Windows formatting. You can't put it in. Now, Apple will read it, like the MacBook will read those files, but you can't write to that disk, meaning you can't add new files, you can't delete old files out of the box. Yeah. You still have to get some third-party thing and install it to be able to write to and sort of, format or play with your external hard drive. This is maddening on every level because number one, if you're running a FAT32 system, which is the formatted drive, which is one of the other primary, it's like exFAT, FAT32, and NTFS. NTFS is the standard Windows one. So if you just put like a thumb drive in your laptop, your Windows laptop or your Windows desktop, and you say format, chances are it'll be an NTFS formatted thumb drive or any drive. FAT32 does not let you, I forget what the file size limit is, but there's a file size limit, meaning if you have a movie that's like 6 gigs, you can't put it on that drive. I think the file limit is like 3.6 or 3.7 or something like that. So if you're like me and you have a bunch of movies and you have a bunch of, you're a video, you take and edit video, so you've got these big chunky files, you can't just put them on a FAT32 drive. So then it makes me go, okay, Apple has really gone out of its way to cater to creators, to cater to, video producers and designers and all of the above, who by nature have bigger files that they work with pretty consistently. You would think that either invent your own format that like supports that, or just recognize NTFS. Like, I shouldn't. You can already read it. Why can't I write to the disk? And it's like it's not like it's impossible, because these third-party tools, and there's a variety of them. Pick your poison. There's a variety of them. They allow the MacBook to do it. So I'm like, I don't want to have to download a sketchy third-party thing, Apple. Just make the MacBook, make Mac OS do, like, why? What is the holdup here? It's that, so that I will, again, I fixed it. It's working fine now, but it only works because I had to find some third-party thing. There's no reason at all Apple can't just turn on flip on a couple lines of code and just allow this to happen. And if not, then create a better format that I don't have to wipe my entire drive to access that also lets me put, bigger files on it. Huge. I almost backtracked. I almost cracked. I was like, God damn it, Apple. But I was like, no, just here, we'll get through this and then that'll be it. And then sure enough,
It's always that, like, just let me get through this one issue.
Yeah. But let's go back to iPhones and Android, because I sort of took us on the MacBook route, but
I thought I would just sum it up. If we're at that point, I think I can make a pretty convincing case that Android is the superior mobile OS. And a lot of that is based on that hands-free stuff. The fact that on any Google keyboard, I can just tap the mic button and dictate into it. Google Assistant sending texts better and opening apps better, and just being able to like navigate better with it.
Widgets are better.
Yeah. I agree. I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. The Android widgets are far superior. I do like that with Apple's or iOS's, a couple releases ago, but they basically rolled out an app drawer, which again, like Apple fans probably think like, oh, how genius. And I'm like, yeah, Android's had that for literally since its existence, like I've always had that. Apple just like a couple releases ago, like this year, I mean, it was really early, but they released this like swipe feature on the mobile keyboard. Yeah. Again, Android's had that native for years, without a third-party app to do it. I think Android, there are so many things I miss, like with the usability of my phone, but you cannot beat Apple's hardware. No, like this hardware is so amazing. It feels so good to hold this. I had this, it wasn't like a buyer's remorse. It was like a precog regret of thinking like when I bought this, I thought
precog regret.
I was like, when the Pixel 6 comes out, if they make a mini version of it, I might return this phone. And they didn't. And I've read so many reviews of the Pixel 6 that have pointed out, well, Android appears to be done with the one-handed phones. Aww. And that to me is like, wow, what a game changer. Like, I do not want to go back to a phone that's a mini tablet.
Yeah.
So I think I'm stuck in the iPhone ecosystem right now.
Let me just say a quick thing about that. So interestingly, I have been pondering this a lot too, because I, as you mentioned earlier, I had an iPad. The last one I had was an iPad Pro that we bought for the business. I ended up giving that to my partner in the business. She needed it more than I did, and I was kind of like, when getting this MacBook, I'm like, I don't need a MacBook and an iPad Pro at the same time. Like, it seems like one or the other. So the MacBook clearly, all the things I was going to do on the iPad anyway, I could do on the Mac better, but it still left this niche where I was like, hey, I kind of want a Kindle-sized iPad. And granted, Apple has released that amazing iPad 6 mini this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally upgraded that iPad mini, and it's a great little device. I've played with it a few times. I've been in the store. I'm like, okay, this is fun. I actually had put in an order for it because I'm like, yeah. So then I'll have, and then I as I in that order, Apple's very backlogged, so you can put an order in. It doesn't even ship or charge your card until a month later. So it's you almost can put it almost as a you kind of, I didn't think how you describe this, but like, you kind of mitigate some of that buyer's remorse by just waiting. And so I had it in the queue. MacBook arrives, set it up, and I'm like, all the things I would do on an iPad, I'm doing on, like, they're fine here. So that, and at the same time, I was like, I kind of wanted to move away from a world where I'd have a different device for different things. Cause the whole point of this was that, like, we're consolidating devices. And so I actually canceled that order. I was like, I don't think I need an iPad 6 mini right now, in addition to a phone. Because I was like, I have the iPhone. I'm either going to use that or this. It seems redundant and, kind of a waste of money to have both. But I'm still like, I think if they could build a device that's, because the Pro Max it's not necessarily wider, it's longer. And I don't want that. I want like I think that the Pixel 2 size that I had, because I had a Pixel 2 XL, I should have specified.
That's what they were called. Yeah.
Pixel 2 XL, which that is bigger than the iPhone 12 Pro. And I thought that was the perfect phone size for me. And if I had that, or maybe even a little bigger, like I don't mind the phablet if that's all I have, because then I wouldn't have to get an iPod. So I'm in this weird no man's land at the moment where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have an iPad or like a kind of a tablet device for a while. And let's just see how it goes. Because this MacBook Pro, like, it's so light, and I ended up getting the 14-inch instead of the 16-inch. Even though I'm going kind of down, my old laptop was more in size similar to the 16-inch, so I'm actually going down in size. Thought that would bother me, and I actually like the smaller form factor better. Like, I actually kind of like this little 14-incher. It's lighter, which I didn't realize how much I would appreciate. It actually sits on the lap better, and it kind of, like, I can take it to bed and do some work in bed like I would have done with my iPad, or even just watch movies in bed with it. So there's a lot of stuff that the iPad was used for that is now not, I don't need it for that. I just bring all this up because I'm like, I think there is a place for that phablet. I think that phablet category is still being defined. And if somebody can just figure out, like, in a perfect world, I'd have something the size of an iPhone 12 Pro that could expand out double the size or double the width, right? Like, and I don't necessarily need it to fold. I think the folding gimmick is a little overrated.
Ugh, yeah.
But it would be great to, like, have it expandable, like, kind of some kind of stretchable thing. I'm sure maybe in some point we'll get it, but like just one, I just need a laptop and then a phone that can be, oriented or remapped on any kind of use case. Then I'd be set.
Yeah.
So that's the next frontier.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I think the larger phones would make sense to me if there were always a mini option.
Yeah.
I think what was bothering me near the end of my use of them with the Pixel 3s was that I either had this XL that was painful to hold in one hand, or I had this other one that was just slightly painful to hold in one hand. It was like, man, I either want to use this with two hands or I want it to comfortably fit in one hand like the Mini. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would love to see like that become the trend with mobile devices, I guess. Like, just, make this small one that's just like, hey, this is just a phone. Because I really like my iPad. So I'm happy to just leave the phone sitting on a desk and have the iPad with me for those cases.
Let me give you one more thing to think about. So I was going through in my transferring of stuff from one machine to another. I was going through my OneNote account, and we'll get to this in just a second, but I'm actually abandoning OneNote for a new app called Craft. And as I was doing that, I came across this thing written by Ben Park on Quora that I bookmarked because I thought it was so good. You hear a lot of talk about the metaverse, and not even just remove Zuckerberg and Facebook from the equation, and just kind of just think about, like, what people are talking about with the metaverse and how it's very trendy to talk about the metaverse. And I'm always like, everybody's getting it very either completely confused or completely wrong. Like, I'm just gonna read. It's really quick, but this Ben Park wrote this a while ago. And it's like he just says, imagine a web that, and he has these bullet points that follow. He goes, imagine a web that isn't focused around a computer, but is instead everywhere, in every device, on every person, accessible at every location. It's not a place you go, it's a layer behind everything you do. The next point, you interact with this web via natural user interfaces, being able to open the web by tapping your watch, having a screen appear in front of you. Imagine Minority Report, no mouse, no keyboard. Imagine a web that delivers content to you at any time, all the time, personalized, and no matter where you are. Imagine, and this is where it gets a little creepy, imagine a web that connects directly with the mind. Actions and commands come not only from NUIs, but also from your thoughts. How do you power up your vacuum? Command it in your head. I think this will be our children of our children's children, as they'll be more comfortable with the chip in the brain. And then where it really gets interesting to me is he goes, imagine a web that lets you create and construct almost anything, using the web to collaborate and create a full virtual world in seconds. Use it to command a robotic factory to put together your dream car. So like that to me is what the metaverse should, and what we should kind of aim for, is this kind of contextual layer over real life, no matter where you are, right? And I feel like as we continue on that path, this discussion of device size and use case and all that will sort of fade away, because it will be, hey, I'm at a post office, I can just tap the window and access my Spotify. And like, I don't have to have a phone with me necessarily. Like, yeah, granted, there's a lot of privacy concerns and a lot of logistical concerns and all of that, but just the idea of kind of the contextual web around us that's device agnostic is sort of, I think, where we should maybe aim.
That's interesting, and that'll tie into our next point, because I think we're going to have to start going like speed round. But I was going to say, one of the things my friend Boris, who is very much like an Apple fan, one of the things he and I talk about is I could do without the phone if the watch did like calls and voice to text.
Yes,
because
100%
that I would be really happy to carry around an iPad mini or an iPad, or just not carry it around. You just feel like, hey, I'm going, quote, off the grid, and all I have is my watch. But the phone at this point seems obsolete. Like, it's this weird other object that we have to interact with. And you and Boris have both pointed out to me this thing that I constantly forget, which is like, but it's also our camera. This has become the camera we carry everywhere. And I don't know how we deal with that. Man, maybe we all go to glasses. Just kidding.
It's like that scene in Apollo 13 when they're trying to figure out how much of the capsule to turn on so they have exactly the right amount of power to get back home. It's like, okay, if I don't have this, and my Kindle's on my phone and on this, and I'm good. And then you're like, oh shit, I need a camera. So then it's like, well, I don't want to carry around a camera. It's like you're trying to figure out all the use cases into the most minimal amount of devices, and it's just it gets a little frustrating. And these are first world problems too. Trust me. Oh
my God. Yeah, this is a first world podcast. This is terrible.
Shed no tear for us. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yeah. I back in that groundhog situation, what you just recalled for me was how I remember just getting out of college and getting an apartment with a good friend of mine from high school who had, moved back to town. And us having this discussion of like, he had kind of moved back from college, and I guess I kind of remember like he had lived with these other friends of ours, and like one of them owned the Nintendo 64 and one of them owned the PlayStation.
Oh God.
And it was, so then we move in together, and it's like, well, we only have the PlayStation. Should we buy a Nintendo 64? And we would have this ongoing discussion of like, boy, do I want separate devices, for every, like, do I want every gaming system, or do I just go spend thousands of dollars on a gaming rig computer that can like do all this?
Yeah.
And we would at various times come down on either side of that. But, I think I usually came down on I want a specific device for everything. And now it's like, I'm still wrestling with that like 20 something years later. Like, why do I have so many devices?
Yeah.
Because now they are so much like, they do everything. The iPad is not like dedicated for me to just one thing. Anyway, that said, over the summer, it's like some summer sale that Fitbit had, I bought a Fitbit Sense, which is like their smartest smartwatch,
smartest watch in the land.
Well, I just mean like they have like sort of tiers. There's like
I
think it's called the Versa, and I had this really small one that, of course, they don't make anymore, called the Inspire. It's so awesome. And I was like, fine, I'm going Fitbit Sense. I think I can use it. And I hated it. And mostly I hated it because I got it. And my thinking was this: I'm going to wear a watch during the day, and then I'm going to put the Inspire on at night, which still worked because I want to monitor my sleep. That's like I really think that's a healthy habit for me, is to monitor sleep. Whether or not it's like perfectly accurate, I don't care. I just want like baselines. But what I learned was you cannot connect more than one Fitbit device to an app, even if you, the owner of the Fitbit account, are the primary user of both of these devices. God. It meant I would have to go through a several step process of basically wiping the Sense every night if I wanted to reconnect the Inspire. God. Like, it's not just like a Bluetooth connection. You can't just say, hey, now connect to the Inspire.
Yeah, no, I remember.
It's like you have to disconnect, and it like sheds all the data out of the one, it puts it in the app, so it'll come back. But just during like hot, sticky summer, I did not like the feel of wearing this watch, 20 something hours a day.
Yep.
It was like, I want to take it off at night. And so I put it back in the box after like a week, or less than a week probably, and thought this really sucks. And whatever it was, it had gone long enough that I could not return it. It was like 30 days, and I was like, I can't return it. I'm stuck with this stupid thing. I'd gone back to wearing the Inspire every day. Now that the weather changed, I started wearing it again, and I'm like, oh, I really like this, and it's not that uncomfortable to sleep with now, and the battery's really good, and I like a lot of the functionality of it, but it was because this is an airing of grievances. I think that is just one of those things that, granted, the one little device would be great, but I still, there's still like a weird preference thing of like, I don't always want the chunky thing. I don't always want the phablet. Sometimes I want the mini, and I don't always want the Sense. Sometimes I want the Inspire, or at least something small like that. Like, I would love a screenless wrist thing that just monitors my sleep.
I think the Aura does that, if I'm not mistaken.
What is that?
It's something I keep hearing a lot. Like, Sam Harris has it. If you go to aurahealthcare.org, no, that's not right. Sorry, it's Aura Sleep. I
think I know what you're talking about. It's quite expensive, right? Like, it's like $400 or something.
Oh, it's this. Yeah, it's the Aura Ring. It's ORA, and then Ring. And
yeah.
OURA. Sorry, my bad. God. Yeah, and it does look. Oh, it's a ring you wear on your finger.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Well, I've looked into some of those. There's another one that like does like I think it does like stress and sleep that I thought was really cool, but it's like a $400 or $500 thing, and it doesn't do anything else. Like, it doesn't, it's not going to show you your text messages.
Yeah.
And I think well, this device is great, but like the Oura Ring is $300. Yeah. So but like, again, it's a first world problem, and it's also like, it's a freaking device that measures your health and sleep. Of course it's worth $300. Like,
well, let me jump on the Fitbit bashing, because as I'm saying this, just imagine the Emperor from Star Wars going something complete. Because like, I have this year, starting with the iPhone. Again, I went into this year, not being an Apple hater, but just being like, I don't know, it's probably not.
Yeah.
Just kind of, I'd come a long ways, but I was still like, I don't know. I started this year in that mindset, right? So it wasn't like I came in, guns blazing, but starting the year, I got an Apple, got an iPhone 12, as we mentioned, got my MacBook Pro, and I also got an Apple Watch. And here's why.
This just blows my mind. The fact that you didn't like wade into the pool, you just went straight into the deep end.
I tell you, man, it either was just great timing all around, or it's one of those things where, like, it's quicksand. Like, the further you fall in, you're like, well, then shit. Everything should just be this easy. Let's just get it all done. Because I had a Fitbit Charge 2, I think, whatever that. They don't make them anymore, I don't believe. But they had. It's kind of like what the predecessor to the Inspire. But it was that little rectangle looking one, and I got it in 2019 because, like you, I'm like, I don't need all this other stuff. I just want to track my sleep and track my activity, and mainly my sleep. I just want more data. And Fitbit have since been bought by Google, so that might change how they work for the better or for the worse, don't know. But at the time, they were independent. And, the app itself looks great user interface. The watch, minimal features, but that's what you pay for, and great. I swear to God, on both an Android phone and an iPhone, equally, that damn thing kept disconnecting. I'd have to basically remount it into the app. It's like if I went more than a day without it connecting, and I turn my Bluetooth off sometimes. Like I don't need all these devices talking all the time and draining batteries. So I'm like, let me just stop right here. So there'd be days that, there'd be a day or two where I wouldn't, I'd sleep for maybe 2 nights and then I'd try to pair it. And it's like I'd have to like remove it from the app and re-add it every single time because it just wouldn't talk natively. And sometimes it wouldn't add at all. It would sit there spinning and spinning. It's like, can't find your Fitbit. It's like, it's right here. My wrist is right by the phone. So then I thought, okay, if I moved to an iPhone, hopefully, because again, as we mentioned, a lot of iPhone apps are way more known. I agree with you. Android is a better OS overall for a variety of reasons, but iOS apps tend to sort of, if you're comparing apples and apples, or sorry, bad use of phrase. If you're comparing the same parts of the app from the Android experience to the Apple experience, iOS apps tend to be more reliable, or at least not have some of the nonsense that Android apps have baked in for whatever reason. So I thought, okay, here's the Fitbit app on the iPhone. It shouldn't have, and it was even worse with the Fitbit. Like it was even worse. Like it would get kicked off. It wouldn't even, I'd open it up and it would have forgotten it. So I'm like, well then forget this. Like I can't, it is, again, just like the Windows laptop, it is taking more of my time just to mess with this than to just like, I was spending more time on the technical issues than I was like looking at my health data and like interpreting it and like making it meaningful. So I'm like, forget this. And so I was looking around, like, I still want, my wife has had an Apple Watch for several years. I've kind of kept an eye on it. I've put it on from time to time just to, because my wrists are skinny. Like sometimes big watches are just not comfortable. I'm like, I don't know if I need a watch. I haven't had a watch prior to that Fitbit. I hadn't worn anything on my wrist for 10 years. And so I was like looking at the iWatch, and then they put out the 7 this year, and they added all these cool new health things. And I'm like, okay, as a health device, first and foremost, and again, add in Apple's privacy, policy. I'm like, if I'm going to give any company a lot of my health data and trust that it's going to be okay, Apple's probably, other than like Kaiser, who I get health insurance to, Apple's probably is the only other one I would trust right now. So shoot, I got a phone. I might as well just get a watch too, and then I can just close that loop, and everything can be, their health app is great, and there's several other apps. Like the ecosystem of health stuff as it relates to the Apple Watch was pretty robust. So I'm like, surely I'll have some configuration that's going to work well here. And more importantly, I'm not going to have to deal with this stupid syncing problem. Because like, what the hell? It's 2020. I shouldn't have to remount my watch every time I turn on my phone. And sure enough, it has been a beautiful experience. Like the thing fits comfortably. I got one of the smaller ones. If you're thinking about an Apple Watch, do not get those stupid rubber bands with the weird under, like the under hook thing. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, that's nonsense. Like, I just got a Velcro, like a easy Velcro band that, just works as it should. All that to be said, I'm sad because I was kind of excited about the Fitbit ecosystem. I'm glad you're having a better experience, but
yeah, anyway. I actually have to say, as long as I choose one or the other device, I have not had those problems. So I bet that's device specific, which is what a pain in the ass, because I think only by us discussing 3 different Fitbit devices can we diagnose it like that. Because I would be just like you. I'd be like, what's the problem here? Why is the app not connecting with like this? I would think it's an ecosystem problem, but that I have 2 devices that work pretty well. It might have been
just the charge too as well. Maybe that was they did. I mean, that's why they're not making them anymore. It's because they were just not pulling they just weren't doing what they should. I mean, who knows? I am curious though how Google will integrate Fitbit into their whole ecosystem, and how that data stays either protected or not. Be curious.
We're anticipating a Google smartwatch, so I assume they're taking on a lot of the.
That's true. Yeah, the Pixel
Fitbit
watch
stuff. Yeah, but Google did the same thing when they bought Motorola, and then didn't they let them go later? Didn't they? I don't know if Google still owns Motorola.
No, you're right. That's right. That's I forget exactly the details, but yeah, they ended up selling it away or divesting it.
We've reached the point where I'm I'm out of energy to air the grievances, and we must move on to the feats of strength. And I think name our winners and losers for the year, or at least just highlights.
Yes.
And I guess let's start with the losers.
And on a high note.
I have a great perspective. This is an obscure loser that aggravates me more because they are now advertising in podcasts that I listen to. But there's I'm just still hesitating on talking about it. But there's a platform called Monday.com that advertises themselves as a work OS. And I could not be more disappointed with this thing. Not because my hopes were high, but just that they do not even meet a sort of minimum standard of what I need from a software platform that does what it does. They sort of advertise themselves as a catch-all for these things. Like, do you need a way to organize your documents or your data? Do you want better looking spreadsheets? Do you need a project management system? And they tout all these integrations and everything. And one of the many dirty secrets is that their integrations are one way.
Yep.
Like, you can pull into Monday, but you can't push out of Monday. So yeah, if you like the way Trello works for managing tasks, that's great. But you can't have it sync with Monday where every movement in Trello corresponds to Monday. It'll just sort of push stuff one way. Actually, I think it works the other way. Doesn't it push from Monday out to Trello and not vice versa?
I forget. Whatever it's convoluted either way it goes.
I have a folder in a professional context labeled fucking Monday, which is there's literally like 90 emails between me and support on that. Yeah. And my hands are tied in just a professional context. I have to use this. But the thing that just jumped out at me a couple of weeks ago, which is this stuns me as a digital professional. I use their apps both on desktop and on my iPad. And I was traveling. I only had my iPad. They had just rolled out an app update. So, open up the app, nothing's working right. Like, I can't move items. And so I uninstall it and I go to the App Store, I reinstall it. Sure enough, there's an update available that for some reason didn't automatically update. So I get this new version. And then it's full of bugs. Things that worked the day before on the previous version no longer work. Like, just crazy stuff. Like, they've done, and stupid design decisions like on their swim lane version, like a Kanban board, they've done away with the background colors for the lanes. So all of a sudden it just looks like you have a bunch of cards floating in space, and you're like, if I have to touch and drag, I kind of need to know where the lane is. Plus, we had color coordinated our lanes. So
we had to
fix this. So I start reporting bugs. Every time I see a bug, there's a little way in the app to report it. So I report it, it sends a screenshot, and I'm like, okay, another bug. So granted, their support is wonderful because they have made up for shoddy product development by staffing great support personnel. They are quick. Now, you can't chat with them and you can't call them, but they're very quick on the email.
But let me just jump in.
For some reason.
Wait. We use Monday too, and we've actually stopped using Monday, and I'm going to actually give our replacement in our winners list. So stay tuned for that.
Good.
But every time I reached out to support, all I got was, "Oh, thanks for this recommendation. We'll pass it on to our developers and see if they." I'm like, "Well, then that's not." All they did was just pile the bullshit somewhere else.
That is a problem. I agree, but they are quick to respond.
Yeah, exactly. They're quick to tell you, "Well, it's not something we're working on, but thanks for the thought."
They're quick and polite, and they have information. It's just that 98% of the time, that information is, that doesn't work.
Yep.
So. We should disclaim that for sure. But so I'm reporting these bugs. Well, this opens up a separate ticket. Now, I get that, I've had to work with support software. Yeah, every time. I don't know how I would have made it smarter, but it does seem like if one user is reporting a whole bunch of bugs, you want to group those together into one ticket. Because the way that app bug reporting works is it's automatically sending the screenshot, as I recall. So I'm reporting everything that I see. Now I have 9 support personnel replying to me.
Oh no.
So I work with them to consolidate that into like, hey, I'm just telling you rolled out an update and you screwed things up. Like, you need to roll back this update because and granted, I'm one user, whatever.
Sure.
So one of the things they tell me to do is go here and check whatever. So I click on this link, I open it in Firefox on my iPad, and I get a warning that says, it looks like you're using an outdated version of Safari. You need to make Safari use cookies. So I take a screenshot of that because it's not in the app. It doesn't do it automatically. I have to email them back and I say, hey, so I tried to go to that page you told me to go to. This is what I get. I'm using Firefox on an iOS. It says Safari, so I think your browser detect just doesn't know. Like, there's a thing in web code where you run a browser detect to find out what browser they're using. I was like, it just doesn't know that I'm using Firefox. And they reply, yeah, you're right. We got the browser detect thing is wrong. And I said, well, this doesn't work. And they're like, right, we don't support mobile browsers. And this is the thing, I cannot express how stupid that is. And so my reply is like, if you are a work OS, shouldn't you function in whatever environment I am going to work in, like wherever? Because I'm on an iPad and your app is screwed up, and now you're telling me you just flat out don't support mobile browsers? This blows my mind. I mean, I've been working on the web for 20 plus years, and for a good half of that, more than that even, the thing we lead with is like there's a phrase, mobile first design. That is what you do when you're making a website. Maybe not when you're making like a web software, but still, like, every statistic you look at shows this. People are prefer seeing things on mobile devices. That's just what we're using. Well, now, if you're going to lump iPads into and iPhones together, like, I know that gets confusing, but come on. I could not believe this. Yeah.
Let me just say too that when they support browsers on the desktop, and fully just complete, you can log into Monday on the desktop on a Firefox browser and have no problem. Why can't you do the same on an iPad? Like, what's the difference between an iPad and a desktop? Like, unless you're using an iPad 1 and they're like, hey, look, you just don't have the processing power to deal with this. Fine. Right. But like, that should be a warning that pops up once you've logged in to the freaking browser. Oh God. Yeah.
If you're a web app, like, that is the primary way people get to this. It's not like they're pushing people on their mobile apps. Yeah. Like I would say, there are 2 people. So let's say like 20% of my team uses the desktop app. Everyone else is in the web version of this in a browser, which, by the way, is a resource hog, because I have caught this thing taking up a gigabyte of RAM before and had to kill it. But what you just pointed out speaks to this like larger problem with this software, which is I can see that when you launch, you say, you know what, we can't support mobile out of the gate. Our developers need to like move fast on this other stuff. So we're just going to throw up a browser detect that says, hey, we're not supporting this version, or your cookies aren't right, whatever it was that was causing the issue. But they've never gone back to do that. So they've gotten to the point where they're spending money to advertise themselves on huge podcasts, but they're not going back to fix these problems. And another case in point to that is they have so many beta features that never leave beta. So you'll say, like, I've reported this bug over and over where it's like, hey, your sub items don't work in the Kanban view. Everything should work in every view. Like, don't launch a feature unless it works in every view. And the response is always like, yeah, that feature's in beta, but why don't you subscribe here to find out when it comes out of beta? And I'm like, I've been subscribed for 11 months and you guys have not rolled out a beta. The point of beta is to find the bugs and either fix them and launch or roll back. Like, this is infuriating. Like, you were just using beta as an excuse for like, we're not going to do this. Our product team is just subpar. Like, it is incredibly frustrating. And I have told them, and I will tell everyone listening to this, if I could take back my whatever, it wasn't so much approval as like acquiescence on this. Yeah. But I would strongly recommend nobody use this platform definitely for project management. And I would, it works so poorly for that I would say, go in with heavy caveats and test hard, because if they can't make it work for one thing and they're advertising that it works for everything, doubt them.
Let me just throw the final coda on this. Number one, I support everything you've said. Like I said, we were on it. We have since moved off of it for all those reasons and more. There are definitely better versions of the same thing out there. It has, it's a company that does a lot of sort of hip and sort of, Apple-like marketing. Like you watch some of their commercials and it's like they really do try to make themselves feel like, we're that easy, clean, beautiful to look at app and blah, blah, blah. And so don't be bamboozled by that. And the frustrating thing is, if they just had a product development team that gave a crap, it would be fine. But it's like they put out the version 1 and then never bothered to update it. And they've, to your point, they've staffed up on this customer service to deal with all these issues. I'm like, how about you spend all your money on a product dev team that can just maybe less on customer support and more just making the product better. I can't. We went into it kind of with that, I was sort of seduced by the, kind of by the marketing and sort of how they presented it. And again, trust me, there are better versions out there. We'll get to them in just a second. But Monday.com, stay away. Keep your daughters away. Just it's not worth it.
It could develop into something great, but they have to pivot from supporting complaints and bugs to proactively fixing their platform.
Let me also throw
I don't see them doing that at all. And I've been using them since January. So
let me throw one more insult to injury. They do not let you get a pro, like a business, like one of their pro plans. They don't let you get it for less than 3 seats. So if you have a team where you just want to give, you want to give like guest access and then just have 2 seats, you have to buy a third ghost seat that just sits there unused month after month. And I asked them, why don't you just let 2? I in this particular situation, I just have 2 of us that need full access. The rest are guests. They're like, well, we found that most people have 3. I'm like, yeah, but I have 2. What do you suggest? You can either just buy a third one or just go back to the regular plan. I'm like, that doesn't, no, that's not, I'm telling you right now, I want to buy the pro plan for 2. Oh God, it's frustrating. I've got 3 more losers. I'll go through them quickly because we got to start wrapping up here. I'll go lightning round style.
All right. If Techtivus isn't over till you pin me, George.
3 losers, easy to talk about. The Apple TV app on Roku is garbage.
Really? Okay.
It has since gotten better, like in the last week or 2. But I tell you, there's been so many nights my wife and I have tried to watch either Ted Lasso or Physical or some show, and you pull up the episode you want to watch, and it goes, "This episode is not available right now." And it no matter what you do, and sometimes you have to literally go into the previous episode, go to the end credits so that it automatically rolls into the next episode. And even then, sometimes it doesn't work. It is one of the most excruciating. It was slow. Weird. It was buggy. Sometimes you'd open it, it wouldn't even load. It would just go back to the Roku home screen. I mean, thing after problem after problem after problem. I can't tell you how many times I open it up just to give it a 1-star rating, just so that, some feedback could happen, and I wrote into
That's funny.
Apple support going, you guys either don't even make this available. This isn't good.
It's the last piece of the conversion, and you've almost got Taylor fully on board. Fix this.
I'm not abandoning you until Apple puts out a HDMI stick, and without having to have a bunch of bullcrap sit. Yeah, I will never buy. Roku was genius by putting out just that stick, because then you can keep your shelf clean, and it does the same thing. You don't need a box sitting there unless that box is a hard drive that will play my local files too, which it never is. I don't need it. I don't want it. So anyway, Apple TV on the Roku. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you're using a Roku stick.
Yep. Have since 2018. Love it.
I have a Roku TV, and Apple TV works pretty well for me.
Okay.
Now, I have bones to pick with their UI because this was just, I bought a phone and I got a month or 2 free of Apple TV.
Same.
So I just, installed it on my Roku, matched the app, and then watched all of Ted Lasso and Mythic Quest and unsubscribed. But I didn't understand the UI, what's free? What's an Apple show that's free on this,
Yeah.
I think the Amazon Prime app looks worse on Roku, but it works better because there at the top nav there is a free to me, and you can just go up there and everything's sorted. Like now you can click into movies or shows; they're all free to you. On Apple TV, I was constantly clicking on things that would be like, rent it for only $29.99. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why am I paying you $5 to then pay you to rent stuff? Like, this is a weird situation. So that I wonder if that's interesting because one of my winners is my Roku TV. But anyway, go.
I love the Roku. I love the Roku. Don't get me wrong, but we could do a whole episode on just the poor UX UI of all these streaming apps because it's remarkable how little thought has been put into most of them. Let's say that for another day.
That we're referring to in the name of our show is television panels. That's
exactly
that's what we're pivoting to for the next six months or so. Next
on my list, without getting too much into the details, we still develop for WordPress. We still love WordPress, and there are kind of like we've moved from a world of themes to a world of frameworks, which is you buy a framework and you can basically build your theme from scratch or import, and you just use that framework on every site. We've kind of arrived in a world with two such frameworks vying for the top spot. One is called WP. It used to be WP Bakery a Visual Composer. Now it's called Page Builder, but the WP Bakery Visual Composer. And the other one is Elementor. And, I have sadly seen more people use Elementor lately than the other one. And I have to tell you, that is a horrible mistake. Elementor is garbage. It is one of the most garbage, nonsensical, hard to use things ever developed for WordPress. Ever. And if you compare it to compare it to Page Builder / Visual Composer, it's a night and day difference. Like there's no competition. So if you're out there using WordPress and you're using Elementor, stop it right now. Either just go build on Squarespace or switch over, because if I inherit another site for a client or for something where it's Elementor's in there, I'm going to I'm going to instantly delete it and just build it again in Visual Composer, because I can't even begin for me to get into why Elementor is garbage would be another 3 hours, and I'd have to have like a YouTube video, like it was a flat earth video, just where I'd have to go through all these nuanced things, and you'd have to sit there and like listen to it, because it's so terrible. And then finally, and this probably isn't fair, but I'll throw it out there anyway. As I've mentioned, we have a MacBook Pro now. I have a Steam account, and I had a library of about 6 or 7 games in there that I've enjoyed, and half of them are not playable on the MacBook Pro because Steam does not have every game in basically cross-platform mode. So a lot of those games were Windows only. I bring this up as more of a public service announcement for you all. So if you get a MacBook and you think you have some Windows games that will work on the MacBook or work in Mac OS, please double check that, because they do not.
Now, again, not to undercut that, but I wonder if that's the independent developer. But I was floored when you told me this, because there are Humble bundles I have participated in where they indicated this is for Mac, Windows, or Steam. So it would give you 3 licenses. And so I always thought, well, if you have a Steam license, it plays everywhere.
That was I thought. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you think that? Anyway, my only other loser that I want to suplex before we move on to the winners of Techtivus is Medium. I have the medium.com.
The blogging site.
I was a big fan of when it was when it seemed that their focus was going to be on article writing, and the more it has become everyone's personal blog, and specifically the more it refers those things to me, like it's like recommended for you, and because for the longest time I had that like guilt feeling of my backlog is so huge I'll never get through it. So I had all these articles bookmarked, and so recently I had opened it up and thought I'm going to start getting through this backlog, and I start reading them, and I'm like, oh, these aren't actually articles, these are just opinion pieces from people. And not only that, like just not supported opinion, things that like should have a bunch of links in them for support and evidence and just don't. And it just it became like, oh, we're back to like whatever that. What was the blog? It was blogger.com was the software, but at some point there was a big, like everybody had a blog spot, and I was like, ugh, we're just back to that. Not to say like I haven't published on Medium in a long time, but I constantly consider it because I don't want to have a personal blog. I think like, well, if I want to write long pieces, which may be opinion pieces or something, that's probably where I should do it. But anyway, it was just sort of it's a slight grievance, but I guess I wouldn't mind it if those personal opinion pieces or sort of slighter articles were on it, as long as they didn't get recommended to me. It's like, okay. But I'm not following this person, and hopefully I'm not following things that. So things that would lead this to me. I've also noticed like I'll read things that are I'll read a lot of articles that are like skeptical is not the right word, that are anti-faith, like something that's like disproving this claim of the Christian church or disproving this superstition or something. And then it will recommend things to me from Christians or other spiritualists. And I'm like, I'm not interested in like their non-fact based opinion.
That's an algorithm fail there. That's like exactly. So has a plus instead of a negative in that formula.
Exactly. So I feel like it's like it's like just recommending tags to me or something, not smartly using some AI to like figure out what to recommend to me. So it's like I said, a minor grievance. But let's move on to the winners.
Well, real quick, I just went to the website for the first time in a while because I had the app on my phone. Their UX look really ugly. The whole thing
changed it.
Looks junky, like not junky, but the whole thing looks straight out of like 2006. Like it has that like, hey, it's TypePad from 2006. It's like, to your point, we already did this. Like we've been there before. I don't know. All right.
Interesting. Yeah.
Let's do winners because we want to end on a high note. And we're probably going to cut some of the previous stuff. So we've been going for a while. I look forward to editing out some of my. There's
like two people that would probably just love to listen to us like rant about everything, but you're right. It should be cut.
Let's end on a high note. We got some winners. You got some. I got some. Let's go quick through this and just kind of tease out.
Mentioned, my Roku TV, I went years without a TV, and during the lockdown, I bought one, and so I just bought a Roku. It's like a TCL Roku TV, Roku enabled, and I've just loved it. Like it has been such a winner for me, and like how easy it is to use and to set up new apps, and it's kind of like that thing of like, oh, this is finally at the place where I needed it to be. It is finally a giant tablet with apps on it, and I just interact with those apps.
That's great.
That's how you watch streaming now. There's definitely technical problems. I often have it like crash in certain apps, and I've learned to like unplug it from time to time, which I think kind of clears a cache or something.
That's the modern equivalent of blowing on the Nintendo cartridge, by the way. So you
exactly.
You unplug your Roku and plug it back in. It's like, oh, it's back. We're back.
But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. What about you? I put one in here for you.
Oh,
because you had hyped it up in Discord. Okay. That's that second one there.
Oh yeah, so Todd put in Myst, and yes, the game Myst. Apple has just announced their apps of the year, and strangely, Myst they remastered it for VR, and it looks amazing. But I just didn't realize that they had also put that same remaster out as a I think it's probably on PC too, but it's definitely available as a Mac app. You just get it in the Mac store, and it's beautiful. It's the best version of the game that exists. If you are a longtime fan, there's new things to sort of look at and discover. But they also have this interesting twist where you can randomize the puzzles. So if you're used to playing it and you know all the answers already, you know the puzzles, you can randomize it so it's all new again, which is you can't rely on the cheats and on all of that or just past history. So that's cool. It just looks amazing. It's like the best version of the game that's ever existed. 30 years later, this little CD-ROM game that changed the world is still doing it. And I'm a big fan of Cyan, who's the developer behind it. Rand Miller still runs it. A little independent studio in Spokane, and they're doing great work. So support them. Grab Myst, play it again. Wonderful game. Another, interestingly, and I had the fact that this was also an app of the year. I think Mist was their game of the year, and then Craft was their app of the year. I had already started playing with Craft before that announcement because I've been a little bit, I don't hate OneNote, but I've grown beyond its limitations, and I needed to move to something else because it was starting to turn into Evernote, where it was a place where all my notes and ideas just went to die. I needed it to be a little bit more, I needed something that I was engaging with more. And so Craft is a notes app, very similar to Evernote and OneNote and even Notion and those kinds of things, but it's simplified. The design is beautiful. They're early. They only came out last year, so this is like, this is year one of this new company, and their roadmap looks pretty ambitious and impressive. And like, they really want, unlike Monday, they really want this to be a productivity app that you can kind of use however you want and not feel like you're being, kind of forced into a certain flow of things. So there's a lot of great features now. They're only going to add to it. I kind of like supporting a company like this. Strangely enough, they feel like Evernote used to back when Phil Libin was still running it. He was the original founder. I think, no, he was either the founder or like the first main CEO they had. But Evernote used to have they used to just have a different feel. They cared about the product, and it was more fun to be an Evernote customer. That's kind of where Craft is right now. So if you're looking for either a new notes app or your first notes app, and you want, a lot of customization and integration, but also just a no nonsense kind of beautiful design, use Craft. That's what I would go for.
That's cool. You just called to mind. Sorry to throw in another pop culture reference, but you said there's something about the roadmap, and unlike Monday, and I thought, yeah, that's another thing. Monday always refers me to the roadmap. Oh, this is on the roadmap. This is on the roadmap, and I think of the Seinfeld where he reserves a rental car and then it's not there, and she's like, yeah, we have your reservation, we just don't have your car, and he's like, well, that's the part of it that's important. Anybody can just have a roadmap, Monday. What's important, Monday, is actually doing what's on the roadmap.
Well, and speaking of Monday, so I mentioned we left Monday just this week. Like, so many things have happened this week. It's crazy. Yeah. So we left Monday and we went to a new program called ClickUp. And I discovered them through, I just typed in, because strangely, I was actually doing research on moving out of OneNote, and I just typed in like note apps compared, and there's this beautiful little site that like compares all of them, and you can like choose which features you want to do. Hang on a second here. Note app compare. It's called, I'll find it in just a second. Anyway, so I found ClickUp on that, and then realized, oh no, this is more like a project management tool. And the only thing I'll say is that it's as if it's the same thing as Monday, same ideas, basically the same layout, same structure, but only in this case, they have a product development team who cares. And so it's like, oh, this is what Monday would be 5 years from now if they gave a crap. I'll also say, I was bristling a little against your praise for Monday's support, because when you have dealt with ClickUp support, you realize how deficient it is in almost every other company. ClickUp support, I can't even tell you. They say on their website, like, we have our number one rated, top rated support team. And you see that and you're like, yeah, whatever. That's true. Like, I've only been using them a couple days now, and like, they have a chat, you can do a ticket, but their chat feature works great. And it's been rare that I have a chat app that you want to engage with, because you're actually going to get quick, relevant answers. Like, I can go in and have a question, and they're not following a script at all. Like, they jump right in. They have ClickUp on their side, so they're able to like diagnose it, and they basically give you like a no nonsense, like, hey, you're absolutely right. This is a bug. We've already escalated this. Here's your ticket reference number. You don't have to do anything. They'll get in touch with you when it's done. And so in 2 days, I submitted a bug. The bug has been fixed, and I got an email back going, hey, it's done. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. I'm like, holy crap, this is what it should be.
I would similarly praise HubSpot support.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Love interacting with them. Like, you can chat with them, surprising. And they are on the line with you a minute later, and it's the same thing. If you report a bug, they will go, oh, you're right, that's a bug. We're going to email you when we fix that. And now that's very rare for me to report bugs, but there have been a couple times where I show them something, or they go like, oh, that's, we didn't consider that use case. We'll report that. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, but
it's a huge point.
So far on Click, I mean, we've only been ClickUp about a week, and I'm way happier because a lot of the things that I was having problems with on Monday are not problems on ClickUp. And again, their roadmap looks pretty cool and impressive. They're early, they're still an early company, not as new as Craft, but they're moving along, and I'm instantly a fan. Like they've really, I mean, in a week they've basically endeared themselves to me. Whereas if they, if something goes wrong next week, they've got a lot of grace. Like I'll be like, oh no, that's fine. They know what they're doing.
That's a huge point. Yeah.
The website, by the way, where you can compare all these notes app. It's called noteapps.info, noteapps.info, and you load up all of them, basically all the major ones, and you can compare across anything. What's the encryption like? What's the text formatting like? What's the customer support like? And get kind of really good detailed information. So keep that handy. And then finally, one final winner for me. I've been a fan of them and have been using them for a while, but this year especially, I've just gotten a lot of use out of it. Brain.fm, BRAIN.fm. It started off as a website, still exists, but their app is fantastic. It is binaural audio.
Oh, interesting.
And they have the kind of the killer feature they've added recently is now they used to have kind of like a few stock, like you just load it up. Now you can go, hey, I want to de-stress, and they have like the de-stress category, and so it's music, but it's all binaural, so it hits the left ear and the right ear at different frequencies and at different timings, and it's supposed to kind of reorient your brain and actually hack your brain, so to speak, so that you can focus more or de-stress. And I swear to God, that distress one works like a charm. Like every time I'm super anxious or I've had too much coffee, I play that for like 30 minutes and I'm like, I can get into a flow state so much faster using Brain FM. Go ahead, sorry.
I've literally just downloaded this as you're talking about it because all of that scratches me where I itch. Where I have other apps that do things like that, like Calm.
Yeah, Calm's a good one too. Headspace,
it's
same
not
idea.
so focused, that I love the idea of an app that just does one thing.
I'm glad you said that because Calm, Headspace, there's other things that have that component, but there's usually like a meditation thing involved. There's other things involved. This is just like, give me just this audio. And Spotify even has some binaural playlists too, but like Brain FM was developed almost like, remember when Pandora first came out? It was a use case for the Music Genome Project. So it's like, they didn't intend, right. Westergren didn't intend to like build a streaming app. He's like, hey, look, I've got this amazing algorithm that completely crushes it in terms of giving you related music. We need a use case for it. I know, Pandora, and then that just kind of became what it ultimately did. Brain FM, similarly, I think was a use case for their binaural technology that has now become a business unto itself. So it's to your point, it's focused on just that. Cool. I pay for the monthly subscription because I can get access to all their audio. I think it's money well spent. I've never
How much
regretted it. Like $5 a month or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Very, very affordable. And there's a free version too. So I just say that in case you're like, well, I have to pay. Yeah. If you like it, pay for it. Well, cool. I've gotten to this point this year too, where I am much more interested in paying for apps where there's a good team in place where I know like, hey, this is headed somewhere. And like, I know my money spent is helping that team make the thing better. Like, it's just, prior to this year, I always kind of felt that, but way more sparsely. And now I'm like, shoot, there's an app like again, going back to Craft. I'm like, man, they just completed year one. Here, take my $50 for the year. Like, see what you guys can, like, I want to be it's almost like taking programs and making me a patron, kind of creating a patron system and making me feel like that. And
to me, because I feel the same way. And what I think of all the time and what I remind others of when they are looking for free apps is like, it goes along with the Apple privacy protections. If you're not paying for the app, then you're not the customer. You're the product.
Yep.
What are they doing with your data to make money?
Yep.
And to Apple's credit, that because of the way they've structured their ecosystem, that's not as much of a problem on Apple as it is on Android and Windows, because Android and Windows thrive on like that open source, third-party stuff. Yeah, that means you're not the consumer. You're the thing being sold.
Yep.
So I'm definitely happy to pay for apps that do a thing that I value, but my God, we've talked so long.
Well, let me just one more thing on that. And it's more likely now that if you pay for an app, it's more likely that that company won't try to find a quick exit. Right. So it's like, it's not ad support. It's like if they're turning on subscriptions soon in their life cycle as a company, they probably want to be around longer as an independent entity.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because those ones that don't, they're waiting for they have an exit strategy, which is someone acquires us for all of our data, and then we're done developing this. Yeah.
Yep. Let's wrap it there because we could keep going. Like I said, we'll probably have to edit some of this. And oh my God, we talked for a while.
I wanted to mention in closing that the first time we did a Techtivus was 5 years ago. It's episode number 25.
Oh, wow.
And as I look at the description that we wrote, it's Todd won't shut up about pure Android. So we've barely moved forward. I'm still trying to get that pure experience, like the single device that does the single thing or whatever. But if you want to check that out, I thought it was funny to mention that. You can find all of our episodes at panelism.inc. Usually,
it's up right now. I just pulled it up.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. And you can follow us on Instagram, although we haven't posted there in a long time, but it's also panelism.inc. Anything else we need to plug?
No, I'm looking forward to more of this in the new year. We've got some plans.
I agree.
And, we're going to be talking more comics and culture, and I think you're going to hear from us more consistently now, especially that some of these tech issues are solved.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We have griped a lot today, but behind the scenes, we've actually solved some pretty huge problems. And so that's exciting to think like, oh, well, maybe we can start moving ahead faster.
Yeah. It'll be fun. This will probably be the last episode of the year. So here's cheers to 21. If you don't hear from us between now and 22, it's been a great, busy as hell, but still good year. And I think a nice recuperation from last year, which was, we don't have to rehash that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I look forward to talking about the year of 2021 in the year 2022.
Exactly. Well, from all of us here at Panelism, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. It's been fun. Thank you. Oh, you have more to say?
No. I feel like we're probably going to fade out like 30 minutes ago from where we are recording now. We should just start at a long, slow fade. Yeah, but I was just thinking like, one thing I miss is that on The Sound of Young America, Jesse Thorne used to sign off by saying, "Our show is produced by speaking into microphones," which I always thought was funny because he didn't have a production team. And when you said all of us at Panelism, I thought, yeah, our show is produced by us.
Yep. We should do that thing where it's like our editor is Taylor Trask, our sound engineer is Todd. It's just like list ourselves, but just under all those things. Our associate producer, Todd A. Our associate producer, Taylor Trask. Just keep going.
Our graphic designer, our notes writer, Taylor and Todd.
Panelism is produced in front of a live studio audience who is mostly silent. No, it's